Hello and welcome to Planner Masterclass. This is session 8 where we're looking at managing finances from our project plan. So we're going to start this session by looking at Community Edition and then we're going to work our way through and look at Planner working into the main application as well, Live Edition if you like. So we've got our sample plan here and we're going to check our plan out. And it opens as a template plan. Now we've talked in many of the other sessions about scheduling our tasks, but here we're going to look at setting the costs up for our tasks and rolling that through into the project plan and budget if you like. So let's drop into one of these tasks and have a look at the resourcing and cost tab. So we know when our task is starting and finishing, it's running for a certain number of days. It's worked out that if I'm allocated to 100% of the time, or the project manager is in this case, that comes out at 80 hours. So it must be an 8-hour working day, 10 days task. And you can see here we have a cost per hour for that user as well. So it knows that for 80 hours at £20 an hour, that's going to be a resource cost of £1,600. And that's showing up down here along with any fixed costs. There's no fixed cost shown on this task at the moment, but we could add one. So say we need to hire some equipment, something like that. We've now got a fixed cost that's giving us a resource cost and a fixed cost and therefore a total cost for this task. If we want to add somebody new in, we can either pick them from the list like that. So I can say I want this business analyst to be working 50% of the time. Their rate is £15 an hour, therefore that's given me some extra costs again. That's flowed through into the resource cost underneath and working its way through into the summary at the bottom. And I can add somebody new if I wanted to, so I could add myself on like this for say 30% of the time. Now there's no cost rate for me yet, so I'm going to go and put that in a second, and that will then flow through. So it's not contributing at the moment because it's a 0 rated, but sometimes you want that. So for example, you might want to flag that certain people are working on the task but you're not having to pay them, that perhaps they're an overhead or sunk cost or something like that. You're not having to actually pay them out of your project budget. There might be a supplier, you're identifying that they're working on the task but you're paying them out of a fixed cost, for example. So sometimes 0 rating things is appropriate, sometimes it isn't, and we've got flexibility over that. So I'm establishing my cost there. Let's just go and update my my hourly rate, which I'm going to do in here. File, manage resources, pick up the user, and I can then give them an hourly rate like that. And that will now be feeding through on that task into the overall model, and that's coming from that task and it's rolling up through the tasks into the summary groups and up to the project level as well, and we're going to see that in a second. Just to get a feel for that, we're just going to copy this summary group and paste it in underneath. So as they've been copied with all the contents, my bookings, or in fact all those bookings we set up, will be currently identical on both summary groups. What we're going to do now though is come in and add a new task to this summary group up here in just the normal sort of way that we would have done before. We're going to make it start after the preceding task and run for say 5 days, and we'll call it new costed task like that, and we'll come to our resources and costs, and I'm going to put myself on it for 80% of the time like that. It's now picking up my cost rate. We're seeing all that come through. There might be some fixed cost on this one, so we'll put it in like that. So we're building up the costing model. We can do that at the same time as we go through the plan setup, but sometimes people do the plan setup, then they come back and do the costing afterwards. So here we've seen adding just another task and doing the costing as we go. Sometimes you want to do it later. If you want to do it later, there's a form for helping you do that. So we come finances, costings, data entry. And here we can choose the resource and then see what the costing setup for them is. So I can come and find myself here. And I can see I've been currently allocated to 3 different tasks and what the cost of that is and the number of hours. So I could come in and say, oh, actually, I could do with working on this one as well at 10% of the time. And then this one down here, I need to be on at 5% of the time. And work that through. And sometimes that's a better way of doing it. You've got the plan set up, and then you're saying who needs to work on it, and you're coming through like that and seeing all that stuff flow through. You can also add fixed costs on at this point as well. Of course, we're adding it on the fixed cost is associated with the task as a whole. So we're not adding a different fixed cost for each user, but we're showing you the fields here that you're commonly updating. So I'm going to put a fixed cost in as well. So that updating on this form is the same as running our way through all the other tasks below. So if you're just adding a new task, of course, it makes much more sense to do the information in the one form. But if you've got a set of tasks, you're running through it for a number of users, it may well be better to use that costings data entry form. So that's about setting the budget for this project. And as I say, we'll be rolling that data up. Now, we don't normally see that because our default view in Planner is this sort of plan type view. We're interested in dates and times and resources and things like that. But we can change the view. We talked about how to do this on an earlier masterclass. And if I come to costs, we'll see now we've got a view which is rolling up the data that we put in for costs. We've got fixed costs and resource costs giving us a total cost on each task. We've then got that, and that's at a task level. And then we've got those things rolling up cumulatively, cumulative fixed, cumulative resource, cumulative total cost at each summary group. So these are two different now. Now we've added different data to each one. And then, of course, those roll up to the top project level. So we're getting these important figures rolling up to the top project level and all the details. So we can see all of that there, which is a different type of way of looking at the data, but is often when you're doing this sort of costing or financial analysis, that's what you're interested in. Now, in Community Edition, we just save this plan back in. We keep working on it. We've got this analysis here for anybody for free in Planner itself. But when we're running the main application and our Planner file is checked back in, we read out some of these key things as project properties. And so we can see those here. If I come back to my home and look at status, you'll see it's bringing me some properties like percentage complete, etc., and some risk and issue properties as well. These are all being calculated as properties fed back to the main system. We're doing exactly the same with these ones here. So at the top project level, you've got fixed cost, resource cost, total cost, progress cost, actual cost. Obviously it's the cumulative versions because it's the rolled up ones that we're really interested in, because that's giving the project level current figure for those values. So mainly at the moment we're budgeting, so we're working on fixed cost, resource cost, total cost. We're going to go and have a look in a second now, in fact, at a plan that's been worked on already, and then we're going to see what progress and actual costs look like. So I'm just going to save and close and check that plan back in. And I'd do this obviously at the beginning of the project as I was costing all that up, and I might revise it as we go through. But then if we're updating a plan with actual information and progress information, we want to see all that flowing through the cost model as well. So I could do that on the same plan, but in fact I'm going to pick up a different example. Okay, so we're going to use this demo planner file. And this is a bit more indicative of a project as it might be in mid-progress. So we can see we've got a number of tasks here that are complete, some are partially complete, some are yet to be started, etc. And so we might be interested in coming in here onto one of these partially completed tasks and setting information about its percentage complete. That's important, so we might move that up to say, let's set that at 75% complete. And in resources and costs, you'll see we did have some people allocated in here. Again, same sort of thing, cost model, allocated hours. And then you see some of these have got actual hours against them. So this is where I've selected this and said, well, actually, I've spent 30 hours of my budgeted 40 hours on this activity. So I can come in and we can do that for example, Sue. So Sue had 10 hours budgeted. We can say she spent 8 of them like that, and that's going to work through as part of the actual resource cost. So what we've got down at the bottom now is our total cost for the task that we worked out in terms of a budget, and then we've got the actual resource cost, what we've actually spent delivering this so far. We also had a fixed cost of 1,000, and we've spent an actual fixed cost of now say 650, like that. And that's flowing through here. So we've got the budget cost of the task, and then we've got the actual cost of the task, what we think we've spent so far. Now, that we also have a third figure, which is the progress cost for the task. Now that's a figure that's calculated based on the current percentage complete of the task. So if the overall budget was 2650, we're 75% of the way through, and therefore we should have spent 198750, but we've actually spent 1790, so we're slightly underspent on this task at the moment. So it's given us the indication of the overall cost of the task, what we've actually spent, and if we're not quite complete yet, where should we be in that proportion stakes. And these are worked out automatically for you on every task as you put in that data, as you just percentage completes or adjust the budget costs or the actual costs showing for each task. Now again, we can do that here, running through each task, and if we're just updating one task at a time, that might make sense. But we also have a timesheet type view for this. So we come back to finances, timesheet data entry, which is the other of the finances forms. Different fields open this time because we're interested in updating different things. So if I come and find me, and we'll see I've been allocated to a number of these tasks. I can see how many hours I'm allocated to. I can see the actual number I've spent on those. We can see some were underspent, some were overspent. The issue is how that works out on the whole. We can look at each individual task and see what that looks like in terms of under and overspends, of course. But we can also, and generally are more interested in the project as a whole. So I can come through here and find some of these others. So this one down here, I can say, well, actually, I've spent, of my 10 allocated hours, 5 of those. And we can also update the percentage completes here, because this is a common place that we might do that sort of thing. So I'm putting in that sort of information, the actual fixed cost I've spent, the actual hours I've booked, the percentage complete. Per user, save and close that. That data feeds back in to these individual tasks here. And again, we could run that sort of task summary type view that we were interested in a minute ago, and come select a view, costs, like that. And now we're seeing for this particular project, we're more interested in the cumulative ones. Total cost is 55. Actual cost 1400. We should have spent 2100. Now that might seem a little strange because we're quite a long way towards the end of this project. We are underspent, yes, but there's quite a big chunk to come, and that's because I think in this particular project, yeah, there's a big fixed cost at the end. We probably pay the supplier on completion a large chunk, and that will come through as being due when that task is due, move complete here, and it isn't currently. So it's picking up that cost model reasonably well for you, and you've got something that's a little bit like earned value appearing in here by looking at what you should have spent, what you have spent, and seeing how those compare. Are you ahead or behind? So that's looking at those same things again within Planner directly. As I mentioned, when you upload your Planner to the main system, so let's come and have a look at the main application here, you'll have that information being uploaded. So I'm in a portfolio, a collection of projects here for the Department for Information Services, and many of them are using Planner files, not necessarily all of them, but I'm in the portfolio task view. So here I'm seeing the database of all the information we have for all of the tasks across the entire system, and I can use views here to come and see that across multiple projects in one place. So if I see a full data table for costs, I'm not interested necessarily in the Gantt chart here, but I can see all the costs against every single task within this portfolio. I could of course be using filters to filter some of those out. I could choose a table which is looking at cumulative and summaries. So this is just showing me the summary tasks within the various projects and what their costings are looking like. Or I could choose a view again, which is a slightly different, project cost summary. And this is giving me each project and its top level value. So I'm getting that feel for what the total cost is, the actual cost, and the progress cost should be for each of those projects. And of course, again, we can use filters to see which ones are overspent, where something is bigger than something else. So really useful to be able to get all that sort of data back for me. in this central location. We can also, of course, use trend analysis to trend some of that content if we want to, and see how those figures are comparing against each other. So let's have a little look at that as well for this project, CRM update. Okay, so let's go project trend. So the last one I looked at was this, which is baseline finish. So I'm going to load a different one. We're going to go for finance timeline. Okay, and here I can see the budget cost for the project, which has been changed back in October, and I can see the progress cost and the actual cost against that, and I can see some changes in there. So it's allowing me to see how that moves over time. Here we've got something set up to show the last year, but you could be looking at days or weeks analysis in here and seeing how that data moves, because those are properties, they're in the analysis database, they're history trended, as you can see, so we can analyze those and display them. And that could be appearing in a report if we wanted to, alongside the stats and things like looking at the number of overspent tasks, for example. So let's just have a quick look at that. We've got reports looking at some of those sorts of things. Let's come here and do project report. I'm going to go and load my weekly review for this project. I haven't done this for a while for this project, so I'm not exactly sure what we're going to get, but I'm sure it'll be interesting all the same. So this report's doing a very detailed analysis of the project, comparing this week's data to last week in the main, or looking a week back and a week forward, and it's producing to Word. So again, we've got some of those figures, key ones like progress cost, actual cost, showing up here, the data for last week to this week. But what I'm particularly interested in is costs, so I'll just come down through some of these analyses and find my costs one. So here we are. I've got that finances that we saw actually a second ago. We were looking at the annual version of it. Here we're looking back a month, forward a month. So we're seeing how that's, in fact, sorry, back 2 months. So we're seeing how that's looking in a bit more detail. And then we're looking at things like what's the spend information on the current tasks that are active, overspent tasks in this project plan, by using those filtering rules to identify ones that have spent more than the original budget was, and again that sort of summary roll up by groupings for the project looking at costs. So all that data is there, and you can run analysis to come back and get the particular things that are of interest to you straight into a report like this, alongside all the other sorts of information. And Planner is assembling all the information like that for you. You've just got to go through and put percentage completes and actual times against it, and you're going to have then all this stuff available through into analysis and reporting when you want it. Okay, so that's the end of our masterclass looking at project financing with Planner. Thank you very much.